Hey guys, welcome back to Spring Cleanup 2026. This is going to be probably the most inexpensive 12-string guitar that you can probably find. This is my Vangoa VA20CE-BKML12. Some of you will obviously know that the BKM stands for black matte. And at one time, this was black matte. But the problem was that any fingerprints, if your hands got sweaty at all, it showed up glossy and the thing never looked clean. And I decided I might keep it. I still don't know for sure, but either way, I didn't like the looks of it. It never looked clean. So I sanded all the matte black off of it, front, back, went around the EQ and the pickup or the power output jack and cleared it out. So today, being Spring Cleanup 2026, we're going to go over it and make sure that all the measurements are right on it. These are maintenance things that you can do at home. You don't have to get yourself a luthier to do. You might want to if you're not comfortable with it, but I'm going to just show you how to see, even if you measure it out, and see if you want to have a luthier look at it. So let's start out with, of course, the nut. So the first thing we're going to do is take our capo, put it on the 3rd fret. And then what you want is just a little bit of gap between the 1st fret and the strings. You can usually check this by just tapping them. These are all really low, but there again, I like a very low action on my guitars because of carpal tunnel. I don't have to push so hard on the strings to make notes. But if you want a little more accurate measurement here, get out your feeler gauge. In particular, your .020, .018, and .016 inch feeler gauges. So you want the 2 larger strings sets to be about the .020. And these are about where we want them. There's a little bit of a gap there, but we can deal with that. The center 2 at your .018. Let's try it from this side. And there's a little bit of room in there. And then the skinnier 2 at .016. And those are the closest of them all. The upper 2 had a little bit more of a gap to them, but once again, this is all subjective. Some people want them a little higher, some people want them a little lower. That's just a good place to start. So we know that the nut is in a proper area site. Next thing we're going to do is check the bridge. And for it, we're going to get out our straight flat edge, put it down right through the center of the strings on the frets. And you want that to just come over top of the bridge here at the bottom. And there's actually a little bit of a gap there on this one. There's a bit of a gap, maybe about 1 millimeter. That's fine. We're in a good area there. If you've got like way too much room or way too little room, if the straight edge hits the bridge and like there's a 2 or 3 millimeter distance there that it's got to go up, then you're going to want to check out belly of the soundboard to see where it's actually setting. This one is acceptable. You know, as I say, my other 12 string has about a millimeter high on the bridge, but it has a bit of a belly on it. So Considering this one's a very inexpensive guitar, I think $200 got you the guitar case, capo, the basic kit. So it is a very inexpensive guitar, but you get what you pay for. So the next thing we're going to check is action at the 12th fret. And this is about 2 1/4. Pretty much across the board, getting down into 2 millimeters in the skinnier range. Now, if you're a heavy strummer, that is fine. That's an acceptable spot. Me, I do a lot of more slight, easy finger picking, and I enjoy a much lower string height than that. So what we're going to do, I would rather have it around 2 to 1.75 millimeters at the 12th. So today we're going to do a truss rod adjustment because we've already done the saddle and sanded it down too far, as a matter of fact, but that's a whole other story. So what we're going to do is do a little truss rod adjustment to try and lower the action. And how is that going to happen? You may recognize my professional artist rendition of a truss rod. Now, of course, here's the side view of your neck and the head-on view of your neck, with the body being down here and the headstock being up here. For truss rod adjustments, first off, the truss rod is a metal beam that goes down through, buried right down the middle of the neck, and it is threaded through one way or the other, and either down here inside the sound hole, or on sometimes up in the headstock with a little cover over it, is a adjustment socket. 6-sided L-shaped adjustment tool is what you need, not a paid promotion. Anyways, if you tighten this truss rod, what it wants to do is pull this here this way. That will pull the rod up and in essence push down on the headstock. Now you want a little slight bit of bow in the neck. I personally keep mine about as flat as possible, but there is still a little bit of a bow to it. So what we're going to do is tighten this here truss rod, and the rod's going to try to make it shorter, so that's going to pull up here, push down there, and that should lower your action at the 12th. So the first thing we check before we do any adjustment is make sure with a straight edge that we have contact at the 1st fret, contact usually about the 14th or so, because the truss rod will create the difference between here and there. It does not affect up in here because that is molded, made, bolted, glued right to the body of the guitar. So the truss rod does not do any adjustment here. It only does from the empty spot here up to the end. So we put on the flat edge, and if you put it on there and you get contact at either end, you should be able to move it back and forth a bit. You should have a little bit of a gap down in there, which we do. So we are going to tighten the truss rod, which is down in here on this one. But whenever you're doing any sort of setup like this, loosen off the strings. A lot of people say because if you were loosening it, the head's going to come up and that's going to take pressure off and you won't have to worry about it. Whereas when we're tightening it, we're pushing down on here, so it's going to put extra pressure on these strings. The strings are pulling up on the head. But either way you go about it, if you're going to be doing an adjustment, you are going to be working against the tension on the strings. So we want to loosen off all the strings first before we do any truss rod adjustments, tightening or loosening. And because we're doing a setup, We might be doing the tightening and loosening of the strings a few times. We don't want to take a chance at breaking a string, so you always make the adjustments on the old strings. When you're doing a setup, you don't care how it sounds. You want to care about how it feels to play. Once we get that set up, then if we're going to change the strings, we change the strings. But because we might be loosening, tightening a few different times, we want to do the adjustments on the old strings. And then, as some of you will know, you always loosen the skinny strings first, because there's a lot of tension on these strings, and if you take the tension off these little wider, more strong strings, you're going to put a lot more pressure on the skinny strings, and there's a chance that you will break them. So always loosen the skinny strings first. And as I say, take all the pressure off of them. And so now we've got the proper sized L-shaped 6-sided adjustment tool, not a paper motion. And I'm not going to tell you what size it is because guitars differ. Yours might differ, so find out what size it is for your guitar. And okay, so we want to make a tightening action on here. We are only going to turn it about 1/8 of a turn to 1/4 of a turn. You don't have to make much of a difference here to make a big difference here. So we're only going to move that much. But while we have the strings loosened off, let's get a flashlight and a mirror and have a look inside. So I take my little flashlight, spread these apart, put the flashlight down in there, and first off I'm going to point the flashlight towards the neck and the headstock. And then I'm going to take my little mirror, which I picked up, inspection mirror, put it down through there, and I can take a look around inside, make sure I don't see anything out of the ordinary. Check and inspect the socket for the truss rod, and just check around for anything that doesn't look right. This particular one also has a pickup in there, so there's wiring that goes from here down to first over to the control panel, and then down to the output jack, which is over there, over there, over there. Yeah. And where did the mirror go? Gonna take a look down that way as well. Would be a lot easier to do as well if you turn the flashlight around to lighten up the other half of the guitar. Everything looks good. On this particular one, I had to tape up some of the leads because they were resting against the outer body, and when I was playing, I was getting buzzing, which took a while to figure out because I thought it was buzzing off of the frets, and it wasn't. It was buzzing off of the strings touching the side. Always make sure to remove everything from inside when you're done, because, well, you'll find out if you left anything inside real quick. So now let's bring it back up to tune and see if the adjustment made any difference with the strings at the 12th. And since we're only checking the height of the action at the 12th, you don't have to get it into perfect tune. You want to get it into a rough tune. So My tuning is down tuned to D, G, C, F, A, D. That's why it sounds a little low to you. Back to the action at the 12th, and we have just slightly over 2. Some of them are at 2, some are just slightly over, so they did bring it down. And these are all at an acceptable level. 2's pretty much all the way across the board, the lower one at 175. So now we can bring it into actual tune. So there we have it, up into tune. Now tuning the guitar, the 12 string. Everybody complains about how tough it is to do. It's not all that tough. The thicker strings that you have are your basic tuning. The only difference is the skinnier of the two is the same note you get at the 12th or the octave. So if you fret the 12th of the thicker string, they should match. On the thickest 4. The bottom 2 are the same note, and that's what gives you the ring. So that was a little bit out, but that's because we just had all these strings loosened off. So what we're going to do is take a little while to tune it. Grab these strings, give them a little tug because they were loose. Make sure your spacing is uniform, and then tune it again. And that will, it might take a couple of times for these strings to get back where they were before, but they will. These strings look like they could use a changing soon, but I don't play this one often, so we're going to leave it at that. Once again, VA20CE-BKML12. L for left. But as I say, it was matte black to begin with. I didn't like it, so I sanded. And believe me, it was a lot of sanding because I did it by hand. I did not use a machine to do it. And the neck is different. Obviously, you can see the 3-piece, but it plays very well considering it's the cheapest 12 string you'll ever find. It does what it has to do, and being left-handed makes it pretty rare. So that's it for today, I guess. This was my Vangoa VA20CE-BKML12. So this is the 4th of my 8 guitars at the moment. We're going to go through the other ones, do the same thing on them. It might be a little bit of a repeat for some of you guys, but I'm hoping to get different people to see just how easy it is to basically give your guitar a slight tune-up at home without having to get a luthier to help you. Yes, some of the things are going to be a little more intense. I'm going to have to put a bridge doctor in my Seagull 12 string, the one that I had on here 2 weeks ago. That's going to be a trick. But we're going to learn how to do that together. That's why I'm working on these guitars, to try and get a little more practice at it and get more comfortable with doing more and more stuff. Thanks for watching. Please share, like, subscribe, leave a comment below. Tell me what I did right, did wrong. I know I do things wrong. I'm not a luthier, just an old guy with too much time on my hands. So with that, thanks for watching. Catch you next time. Bye now.